So duty of candour is a really big thing, but what exactly does it mean?
Well, the duty of candour is really just an extension of the NHS's being open policy, which is about being open and honest where things have not quite gone as planned. Duty of candour really arose from the Francis report and the mid-staff's inquiry. And what it does is that it encapsulates in statute our responsibility to have a conversation with the patient or their family about the clinical incident. This has to be explained clearly. We have to say sorry, although this is by no means an admission of liability. There has to be an offer to put this in writing for their future reference. And anything that is said must be clearly documented in the notes and also in the datex form. Duty of candour kicks in when moderate harm or above has occurred. And it can be difficult sometimes to understand what moderate harm is. There are strict definitions, and examples might be a return to the operating theatre, an increase in the level of care provided to that patient, or a readmission to the hospital because of a clinical incident.
So Kay, who has to carry out this duty of candour conversation?
Usually it's the patient's consultant, but it can vary in different cases. Sometimes it might be a junior doctor who happens to be, the one who's leading on it, who's there and who's asked the questions. I think the key thing to remember is that, we do have resources available and the staff can access that. It is on GTI, so they can go there, and of course there's a patient safety team who are on hand to provide some advice as well. We have to remember as well that we do have a time frame, and at Guy's and St Thomas's we have 10 days to carry out this duty of candour conversation.
Where should this conversation take place?
Well, it should be somewhere that's private because it's quite a sensitive conversation, but also it would be important to ask the patient or their relatives where would be suitable for them, so somewhere off-site from the hospital or maybe somewhere closer to their home. On occasion, it can be quite difficult because the patient might be in the community or they might be discharged and their follow-up appointment might not be for some time. So in those situations, although it's not ideal, you might have to consider and discuss whether a phone call or a letter could be used. But again, it needs to be handled sensitively, and also we need to just make sure that the person would have support with them before that conversation takes place. I think following that as well, we need to make sure that we then send a letter documenting the details of the conversation that we've had with the patient or the relatives, and in that letter there should be the summary of the incident, all the details, and we should include a point of contact from the directorate where the incident occurred. Once that's done, then we also need to make sure that we keep regular communication with the patient at intervals that are agreed with them, and also by the right methods. Not everybody has email, for example. So it's important at the end of the process that we explain what's happened, we offer to share the report with the patient, and then they can ask any questions that they may have at that stage.
So Chris, are there any challenges with actually doing this?
Well, one has to be prepared for a whole range of emotions. There may well be anger, upset. Families or patients may want to register a complaint. They may want to take a legal route. It's important as healthcare providers that we allow them to vent and we give them that space, and then we direct them through the appropriate channels.
So Kay, what do we do in situations where the patient's in the community or they don't have a follow-up appointment for several months? That must be quite difficult.
It's got to be on a case-by-case basis, and I think you've got to be sensitive about it. It may be that it's going to cause more distress by calling somebody back to the hospital. It may be more appropriate to actually visit them at home, and then they've got their own home surroundings around them and they can have whoever they want with them, case by case.
So should we tell patients if we believe that it will add to their distress?
No, not always. It's a very sensitive issue and we need to deal with it on a case-by-case basis. So I'm aware of an example where there was a patient who was near to the end of life, and there were several discussions with the clinicians involved and the patient's relatives, next of kin, to decide whether it would be in their best interests. And the decision was made that it would not be on that occasion. However, the next of kin was very grateful that they'd been informed and they decided to share that information with other family members.
What support does the Trust offer for patients, their families and for staff?
That's really important. So for the patients, we do have the chaplaincy. And for staff to direct patients to support, there is information on GTI again, where it's all very, very clearly signposted. There are different groups available who can give that expert support, because often that's what people need. But we can't forget the effect that it has on the staff, and that's something that we take seriously as well. So as well as having your lead clinicians, because obviously staff have those to go to, we do have supervisors. Again, there is the chaplaincy, and this is all clearly signposted so that we can direct people to the support that they're going to need.
So why is it important that the details of this conversation are documented?
If it's not documented, it didn't happen. So it's good for the staff to know that when they've carried something out, that actually it's recorded and they have that evidence and information to share with other people. It's also really important because when we do the investigation reports, we need to document the details in that report so the commissioners and NHS England have that evidence and they're assured. So we put the details of the conversation, we put dates and times if we've got them documented, and we also include the roles of the staff members who had the conversations and who they spoke to in the family or with the patient. It's also important because we have to audit that we're adhering to the duty of candour. So internally we carry out a quarterly audit, and that's carried out within the Quality Improvement and Patient Safety team, and we'll be in contact with clinicians and managers to check the medical records for that. And again, that report goes to the commissioners, and also Monitor Care Quality Commission, for example, will have the overview of that information.